Why do we observe a trend of prejudice, repression, and discrimination against Black Africans? Even now, the pattern is still present. What is the fictitious animosity that Arabs and white Europeans harbor toward Black Africans? In the past, it was because Black Africans have been superior from the dawn of civilization. Living in gold cities and making the rest of the world envious, Black Africans were the wealthiest of the rich. Because of their inferiority complex, non-Black people chose to depict Black Africans as inferior at that point. However, how? Well, their woolly hair, large lips, and dark skin were used. Indeed, they perceived such a strong threat that they deemed Black Africans to be a primitive and inferior race. In order to teach Black Africans how civilized people like them live, they fought to demonstrate how primitive they were. The evil journey against Black Africans began there. History speaks too loudly to be ignored today, even if everyone remains mute. However, this question should be the main focus. Why are Black Africans perceived as a threat by non-Black people? And why is this same sentiment still prevalent today? In order to restore Black culture to the forefront, we examine history here. We shall refute the historical perception of Black Africans as a threat in this episode. Let's begin. Black Africans' physical superiority was the first factor that made non-Black people feel threatened. Black people are the strongest people on the planet, both historically and currently. And their physical charisma, which is concealed from everyone, is a manifestation of this strength. Non-Blacks were aware that Blacks would eventually control what they valued if they were permitted to engage in their affairs. Black people were thus left in the maelstrom of a newly created system. Black people were enslaved by non-Black people, such as the European colonizer. Physical labor was considered inferior since they were unable to match Blacks in strength. Rather, a person was deemed civilized if they could perform complex tasks. These sophisticated people were then deemed worthy of ruling as kings and queens. Black people were simply excluded from the equation of power. You see, the mechanism used to grade people was altered by non-Black people. Being delicate and fragile was regarded as preferable to physical superiority, which was viewed as inferior. This was promoted as a symbol of delicacy by European colonists, who were themselves frail and sensitive. It is evident from the writings of Greek philosophers such as Aristotle that he believed slaves were born to be enslaved. Remember that the majority of enslaved people in those days were Black. According to Aristotle, these slaves ought to labor for their Greek owners so that they may relax. Without question, Black people were viewed as inferior, because it was believed that enslaved individuals were less sensitive to pain. African slaves even received harsher and more varied punishments. This leads us to the threat's second justification: genetic destruction. You know, Black people were denied all of their fundamental rights because they were enslaved. Nevertheless, for evident Black supremacist motives, the vicious overlords continued to feel threatened. Unquestionably, Black people were bolder, stronger, and more charismatic than their non-Black superiors. Thus, there was a risk of genetic extermination. In other words, non-Black people, including white Europeans, were aware that their genes would become submissive and eventually go extinct if they married a Black person. In biology, during fusion and manifestation, genes with higher survival rates predominate. The merging of genes from the male and female occurs during mating, and the dominant genes manifest in the child's appearance. In this instance, a Black man's genes would predominate regardless of whether a white or Arab woman married him. To put it another way, it will be the genetic eradication of non-Black people. To be honest, this posed a serious threat that cannot be overstated. Black slaves were therefore forbidden from being married to non-Black people. They were aware that Black people are superior to all others due to the natural law of survival of the fittest. The non-Blacks adopted the black blood drop approach because they were so afraid of Black people. Those who had even a single drop of Black blood were viewed as inferior, separated from the general population, and placed in the same social level as other black people. In Latin America, however, where the Spanish and Portuguese empires were in existence, there is proof that this was not the case. Portuguese and Spanish people would wed their slaves and have offspring who would be entitled to all the privileges. In order to establish themselves as Arabs who adhere to Arab culture and customs, Arabs would even marry their black slaves and have children. Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's proceed. The fact that black people were the first human civilization was the third factor contributing to the threat. It is evident from history and fossil evidence that Africa is where the earliest people appeared. There is no disagreement on the fact that the earliest humans settled in Africa. They eventually advanced their cognitive abilities to the point where they were able to create the first human civilization. The idea that black Africans existed and thrived when no other race existed at all is simply unthinkable and somewhat unconventional. Some black Africans were motivated to travel to Asia and Europe by the passage of centuries. Non-black people are resentful because the people who live in Asia, Europe, and every other region of the world now are actually the descendants of black Africans. They refuse to acknowledge that they are the descendants of the race they have been disparaging for millennia. In all honesty, though, it makes no difference if they accept it or not. All of this would be resolved with a DNA test. This has already come to pass. According to genetic tests, Europeans share between 4% and 20% of their genes with archaic populations from Northwest Africa. Any human you choose would have some African genes in them, proving that black people are actually the ancestors of all people. Non-black people, however, do not want that to occur. If it occurs, it will shatter the notion that Europeans are like today's black Africans. Furthermore, this demonstrates that Africa, not Europe or the West, is the center of the world and that they are in charge. Black Africans will quickly become a part of the power structure, posing a threat to non-black people. The fact that Africa is the world's most resourceful continent is the fourth compelling reason to feel threatened. Africa is brimming with natural resources, including gold, silver, diamonds, oil, gas, and other valuable metals. Non-black people are unable to comprehend that there are mountains with gold behind a few layers, which Africans frequently obtain. How can they imagine that all the money belongs to Africans? They are unable to ignore the amazing Arabic written records of Africa's wealth. The wealth and prosperity of Africa centuries ago are made clear in the writings of Arabs such as Al-Fazari. Al-Fazari referred to Ghana as the city of gold and the king of Ghana as the richest ruler in the world at a time when the rest of the world was unaware of what wealth was. Given this, non-black people cannot permit today's Africans to possess all the resources. Therefore, Africans are portrayed using the same stereotyping as having less mental capacity to make their own decisions. Africa's natural resources were thus exploited by European colonists such as France, Spain, Italy, and Britain. 50% of the African country's gold is still in French vaults. In an interview, Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, disclosed this. According to her, France creates worthless paper money for African countries in exchange for gold. Did you know that non-black people, such as white Europeans and Asians, are hostile toward black Africans because of these threats? Do you think that nothing has changed throughout the ages and that non-black people still feel threatened on a subliminal level? Have you ever questioned why there is always one black person on every committee, team, talk show, and movie? What causes that? We'll offer you a clue. It demonstrates that all is well and that black people are receiving their rights. However, the truth is different. Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.